it in 3 or 4 states.
Then we are officially reporting, and now we can begin by saying, welcome back, 1977. Yes.
I think what I wanted to say, and I express this to all of you guys. My life has been so incredibly special. And I think anytime that somebody graduates from college and it's your first TV gig, and my God, I'm on television, and that was truly the golden age of television. That's before we had to fill 24 hours a day and just have all the blather. And we actually did journalism. And I think that at that time, everybody would say, okay, you know what? My station was the greatest. My station was the best. I have worked at every frigging level that you can imagine. Covering a White House, 60 Minutes, and all that stuff. I don't know that I could ever say I was closer and loved the people I worked with more and more appreciative of the talent. Everybody had their talent. And everybody throws that out these days. Oh, they're the most talented, blah, 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 blah. But because of what people have done, what you guys have done since then, it's absolutely remarkable. And I think that we were that special place, that special time where we were right out of college. We were so hungry. We were so, and forgive me, we were so frigging good at what we did. And we worked for the biggest pain in the ass that you could work for. And we made it work. And I'm sorry, I'm done now. But I want to say that Jack Cafferty put us together. And he demanded. I cannot tell you how many times that Candy Hart was in tears, and I had to put my arms around her after that 10 o'clock newscast, and just absolutely blistered her. But what you guys did was so frigging special. Please don't ever forget that, especially now, because I was trying to explain the other night to my kid why journalism is so different now. It's because they've got 24 hours a day they have to fill, and they've got to fill it with blather. We didn't have to do that. We had to do a minute and a half, minute 45, and we could actually do facts. We could attribute everything we said to people. These people now, they just got to get on there and just yak. And they're going to say stupid things.
Now, hold that thought, because I know we're going to come back to that concept. But I want to say hello to everybody else, and thank you for joining us for the Karl Suchman Show, co-starring the rest of us. I think it's very good. How's everybody doing? Ellen, I want to talk to you next, and then Dave, and then my former partner. It's good to see you, Randy. I want to see how you're doing. But Ellen, talk to me. How you doing?
Awesome. Thank you for doing this. What an amazing opportunity. I mean, who would have thought COVID would have pretty much brought us all together, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Your life is going well. I see you on Facebook. I see most of you on Facebook. You're doing well. And you're the one that's staying ship-shape, and you're not eating meat, and you're doing really good.
You know, that's the story. I mean, some of you may remember, even in Des Moines, my mom, aunt, and not quite then, but eventually both sisters would go on to have breast cancer, and we were part of the BRCA1 and BRCA2 gene studies, and I'm the only one without the gene, although half of the cases in our family were environmentally triggered because they were late in life, and only 10% of all cases are genetic. Anyway, so, you know, I was a crazed woman even back in Des Moines trying to figure out like fruits and vegetables kind of thing. So I kind of went off the deep end. The short story is after leaving TV, I became a financial consultant at Smith Barney for 5 years, which was a book and a half during Tales of the Boom Boom Room, if any of you read that. It's a little epic. and then became a media consultant with a guy who would eventually become my husband, Clarence Jones. We were both TV investigative reporters in Miami, had a thing back in the 1980s. And then he eventually moved up to St. Louis and we got married. And the short story is he had a book out. We were traveling around the world doing media consulting. And then I got this idea to write my first book, since you asked.
Oh, very nice.
I crunched the recipes, the numbers on every recipe with an estimated price based on ingredients you can find at Walmart. And then that was so popular, my publisher said, let's do 5 more books. I launched a book tour, which I'm still kind of on, although COVID shut all that down. It's starting to reopen, but now everything's going to YouTube, and that's the short story.
It's a good story. It's good to hear it.
Oh, I've been doing the running thing. I mean, that happened.
Yeah.
I was always a runner, really middle of the packer, but then by my age, which, we all know sort of how old we are, it's just about showing up at races. But yeah, it's just been a way of forced training. And, that's also a gene too, I think.
Well, you're my hero for just saying that we have the gene to run at this age, because Lord knows I have a knee replacement. I don't do any running anymore, but thank goodness somebody can still do it. And let me say hi now to Randy. Randy Parlett, I see you and your family in Missouri on Facebook. How are you doing? Mike, turn your mic on.
Mute. Down on the lower left-hand corner, mute.
Just click that button and there you go. Hi, Patty, how are you?
You can tell how technically advanced I am. It's my wife. She lets me on periodically. No, I think it's a couple of guys' birthdays, right? Karl, you turned, I won't say, and then I see a balloon floating. So
Yeah,
both of you
definitely.
guys look a day over 59.
It's not the age, it's the mileage.
So if I stutter or drool, it's because we just got back from chasing 5 grandkids down to Disney World.
Oh, wow.
And standing in line to stand in line. So yeah, we're both recovering. No, I have 0 complaints for an old Iowa farm boy. I still go out and scratch tomatoes and raise roses and work part-time for Department of Defense, and that's about it. And then I'm just in awe of Mr. Kintzer's photos and videos, and I see him periodically still standing on top of news cars.
Yeah.
That would have gotten all of us fired instantly. But,
Well, I will tell you a story about me standing on top of a news cruiser. Do you remember when we got the first, were they suburban?
Blazer, right? Chevy Blazer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Blazer.
They were Blazers. Who was the chief engineer? Does anybody remember?
Lyle Shire.
No,
No,
it was a Bob somebody. Bob Englehart?
It may have been.
Oh.
Yeah. I think it may have been. Okay, so anyway, so I am sitting in the editing room that Lyle had put together, and it was gorgeous. I mean, that was the sexiest room to edit that you can imagine. And this guy comes storming in, and Jack Cafferty was standing there, and he starts screaming, "One of your frigging photographers climbed up on top of this brand new car that I bought for you and was taking a shot. And guess what? I have his footprints." And of course it was mine. And that was absolutely, he didn't know what the hell to do, because here it was, he had, promised whatever he had promised to get these brand new cars. And of course I climbed up on them and just disgraced them by putting my footprints on top of them. And Jack just absolutely took me apart in front of this guy. Again, maybe, I can't remember his name, but he was an itty bitty little weaselly guy. And Jack just took me apart in front of him. And then after he had left, Jack just looked at me and goes, "You do it again if you need to get the shot."
There you go. That's the way it worked. That's the way it works. Very good. Thanks for triggering that story. Dave Busiek, how are you doing? I understand you went on to be a news director.
Well,
I'm trying to figure out who Professor Rucker is.
Yeah.
Who's that guy?
I don't know. He wears a wig and he's got these mutton chops, but other than that, he's not around.
Professor. Hey, Wiz. Yeah, so when you all knew me, I was a radio guy, but I think I saw that handwriting on the wall. Moved over to TV, reported, anchored for a number of years, then did 30 years as news director, and been retired 2.5 years
Good for you.
ago. I didn't hire Cortney. I think my predecessor hired you, right, Cortney? Didn't Paul hire you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
that was a real stroke of genius. But to be able to work with Cortney for how many years? Long time, 30.
Yeah. I
30
started in 87.
I always said if I could have a newsroom full of Cortneys, all my problems would be solved. But he is a superstar. So anyway, yeah. So retired at the end of 2018. Doing a lot now, a lot of volunteering, a lot of political work, which I could never do before. Taking piano lessons, which I hadn't done since I was about 20 years old. And Ellen, speaking of vegetables, I can remember at Mizzou, you took me to an older lady's house. Now, I have a whole new perspective on older lady. She was probably 24 or 25. And what's for dinner? She grilled zucchini. And I went, grilled zucchini? And I grew up in a grocery store. I don't think I even knew what zucchini was. And oh my God, I hated it. I'm pretty sure I left there and I'd stopped at Jack in the Box or whatever it was across the street from J School there. But yeah, so my worldview has totally changed on that now since I married a nutritionist. And so life is really good. It's great being retired. And I want to hear from the rest of you. But Karl, in response to your comment about there was a real closeness that was kind of hard to duplicate, I think some of it was just our age. We were all young. We were being paid shit, or we weren't being paid shit. Most of us were single. Randy, you were married. Mm-hmm. And Tony, I don't remember if you were married then or not. Karl, you were married
later. I married later. Yeah, not quite.
Okay.
Yeah.
Karl,
I always, it was funny you mentioned that. I remember when I got hired at WHO back in '74, I got hired at $450 a week plus talent fees. And so they said, well, now we're sorry that we're not able to pay you more, but we issue you a third talent check at the end of the month. And so I remember every time like we did sports, we got like $10. And every time that we did radio sports, we got $5.
That's about what it was.
That went on for a couple, 3 years. And then I think the Palmer people got smart, and then they slowly phased out the talent fees. They kind of redid the salaries.
Well, to give you an idea of the radio salaries, I started at $850 a month. $850 a month. You were getting $450 a week? I wouldn't have known what to do with all that money.
Hey, Dave, I was getting $750 a month.
Okay,
Really?
that's
Yeah.
where I started, $750
Yes.
a month.
Well, maybe
I was getting $750 a month.
there's no way I was making more than you, so maybe I'm remembering wrong and it was $650, but it was just not much. Honest to God.
Well, I want to come back to what you were talking about.
Hold on. I want to give everybody else a chance to weigh in for a second, but I want to come back to that too, because wait till you hear what they were paying me. I knew nothing about journalism. They knew it, and they made sure they paid me accordingly. We're going to talk to Steve Gangstead next. Steve is here actually in my house, but he came out to help me celebrate. Steve, how are you doing?
Doing okay. And I marvel, for one thing. It's great to see these glorious faces. I have no idea what I was getting paid. It was shit, whatever. That's the consensus. But I couldn't pull that number out of the air. And oh God, it's so great to see you all. But I was just thinking when Karl was talking about giving Candy those hugs, I think she turned on the tears, Karl. And I think it was just a way to get that, grace. But maybe I'm projecting.
Yeah, maybe not.
Well, Dave, and to come back, Dave, what I was talking about the love, you guys are so special to me. Yeah, we were young. Most of us were single. And we were, oh, how can I express this? Especially for us from Mizzou. And of course, everybody else is going to be pissed off because all I talk about how special Mizzou was. And everybody gets really, really tired of this. But we were able to start doing what we had gone through 2 years of hell to do. And to do it with the people that we were able to do it with. It was so incredibly special. I can remember so many stories going out. Steve, do you remember one of the tornadoes? I don't even know where it was.
Dodge.
It was, yeah. And I remember jumping out in the middle of the night and just grabbing a CP16 and running like hell and just hitting a wire that was down, and it just flipped me over because there was no light. It was black. And what the hell I was thinking I was doing, because I couldn't shoot anything because there wasn't any light. And I still jumped out of that car and ran that fast.
And driving up there from Des Moines in the night, we were listening to WHO radio news for the real-time updates.
But it was just the exuberance of we had to get that story. We had to do that. And we all felt that. And I mean, I still feel that the journalism urge, and I felt that so closely with all of you, and with the love of getting it right. And it was just so special to me. Those are and again, I've done a whole lot of stuff since, but you guys are always, I mean, so special in my heart. Randy, Parlett, I will never forget. This is so stupid. I will never forget being in that stupid van that looked like an owl. Remember that van that looked like an owl?
Vaguely.
Oh, God. Okay, you did a lot more drugs than I did at that time.
But that was our logo, right? The owl was the logo.
Yes, and the owl was painted on the front of that van. And Randy, whenever we would drive, he would see any kind of birds on the road, he would drive over off the pavement to try to hit those birds, and he never would. But I just remember that so succinctly.
That's funny.
I just want to point out what a bunch of pirates you guys are, because Bob Wilbanks hired me at $700 a month, gave me a camera bag and a bell and howl and said, go out and bring back the lead story or you're fired. That was on the first day.
Randy, I always thought that you were one of the most creative guys. Do you remember it was March, it was spring, and the donut tree?
Don't ever bring that up. I still suffer from that.
And we were
Thank you,
going
Kintzer.
to send you some donuts for your birthday. Why not donuts, man?
Somebody had a script and said, you're not doing anything. Go out and shoot this and just voice this thing over.
Oh my God, that was absolutely one of the funniest things. And I could barely shoot that thing because I was laughing so hard because you were so dry and so, you just looked at the camera and said, why the F am I doing this?
Randy, isn't that where you had the world's biggest donut? And I never forget, you're standing there with that white donut.
Right.
Yeah, and he would pick donuts off of the leaves. I mean, off of the branches of the trees.
So was that an April Fool's? Was that an April Fool's Day?
Yeah, it was. And Cortney,
So we can't, as
I
Dave
just remember it was cold as hell.
Courtney burned that tape. I don't know.
as Dave knows, we're not allowed to do April Fool's stories anymore. Right, Dave?
Yeah, the FCC.
Sarah, I want to bring you into the conversation. You had a lot of fun with not only all of us, but also with the management and with all the fun things that they were challenging you to do. You're doing weather, you're doing news, you're doing a whole bunch of things. What was that like?
Well, when I was really mad about doing the weather, I was really good at it. The more mad I got, the better I was, I think. But I want to know who in this group was in the newsroom when Jerry Todd threw a clipboard at me.
Oh, no, sorry. I was thinking of something else.
No.
Sarah, you told me
Ellen,
about that. That was
Ellen,
after I had left. And
My mic a problem?
No, it was Ellen who was trying to get in.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I remember the telephone.
Okay.
He had to do it because that's what he learned in the Army.
Well, no, but
Yeah.
Sarah, I will tell you, you had told me that story later on, and I really want to apologize for all the crap that you had to go through there. I had no idea any of that stuff was going on, and had I known that, I would have. I would not have allowed that without really being pissed off about that.
Well,
But
tell the story, Sarah. I am not remembering that one. I was there for the telephone, which I think left a big hole, like in the wire room wall.
It did. Yeah, there was a dent.
Yeah. So what was?
I think at one point we circled it after Jerry left, and it was the Jerry Todd dent. Yeah, in the wall.
Well, I remember he was intense, constantly intense.
Oh,
Why did he throw it?
I have no idea. I am sure it was some,
he was an
scanner
asshole.
thing. It was probably a scanner. We missed something on the scanner or something.
Bob, he was an asshole.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, Jerry had, he really had temper issues, and I'll never forget, we'd even go out and play golf and go out to Waveland Golf Course, and he would hit a bad shot, and he would just erupt, just terrible. And I used to tell him, Jerry, I said, you got to take it easy. I said, gosh, we're supposed to relax playing golf. So we got the end of one golf match. He took his clubs and threw them into the pond at the Waveland Golf Course, a brand new set of clubs, and said, that's it, I'm not playing again. Got in his car and stormed off. And I'll never forget that. And the other golfers were all jumping into the pond to get his clubs.
That's amazing.
Tony, I want to hear a Zabel story.
Well, we've got a ton of them, I'm sure, Karl, but I was always amazed at Jay-Z, how one of the things that, how he always got away with, remember how they used to always have the fourth shot at the beginning of a newscast, and you'd see Jack Cafferty, Phil Thomas, and Jerry Reno sitting there, and then Jim Zabel's desk chair would be empty. And I used to tell Jack, I says, you know how bad that looks? I says, you got to have Z here for the open. I said, and he would wander in after the opening, and it was just amazing how, I'll never forget one night, he and Bob Earl, and they were great friends, and Bob was a good friend of mine. And they'd always go to Christopher's. They'd eat at Christopher's about every night there in Beaverdale. And they ate there so much they had their own table.
Oh, wow.
And so one night, I was working on a feature report, and Jay-Z did the sports, and he goes out at 6:30. He says, okay, he says, I'll be back. He says, Bob and I are gonna eat at Christopher's tonight. And so he comes wandering back. It's about 9 o'clock, and I swear he's staggering, absolutely staggering down the hallway.
I'm sure.
And staggers into the sports office, and he's sucking these mitts. And I said, Jim, you're okay? You gonna make the sports tonight? He says, all right, yeah. He says, yeah, I'll make it and stuff. And I didn't think he was gonna make it, but I tell you, once the newscast started and once the sportscast started, it was incredible how he all of a sudden sobered up. And it was just so incredible the way he did it. And, we joke a lot about Jay-Z, but he did a lot for me, and I'm not going to, he did a lot of things. I know he and Bobby was a good friend of mine, Bob Earl. I'll never forget when Iowa first went to the Rose Bowl back in 1982. I'll never forget walking in the hallways upstairs, and Bob Earl was walking down the hallway, and he was whistling and real happy and everything. And I said, Bob, you're in a good mood today. He says, well, I should be. I just made $10,000 today. And I says, you made $10,000? How'd you do it? He said, well, I sold out all the radio advertising on the Rose Bowl in about 30 minutes. And the salespeople then got 10% commission. And he sold like over $100,000 in advertising in about 30 minutes. So he was just ecstatic. But
That's
Bob is a
awesome.
great guy, Jimmy, and you guys will have to read. Ellen, congratulations on your writing. But you can see over my, and I'm doing this like the people on the networks do. They show their when the commentators come on, they show their books and novels over their shoulder. I write about WHO a lot in my latest novel, Famous People That You Might Meet in Eternity. And it's a surreal Christian novel. It's been out for a couple months now, and it's been doing real well on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all the other book sites. And I do writing for a hobby. So if you want to find out a lot about Jay-Z and our sports backgrounds and that sort of thing, read the novel. And it's a catchy novel. It's got a little catch at the end, and it's a surreal Christian novel. It's about a former sportscaster who goes in for minor knee surgery and ends up in eternity, he thinks. And so it has a kind of a surprise twist ending. I think you'll enjoy it.
Sounds interesting, Tony. Thanks a lot. I appreciate that. That makes me want to go to Mr. Kintzer here, because every time I go to Facebook, I see this beautiful family he has, and I can't believe he actually has gray hair. I mean, seriously, he was always the young pup in the group. And now I see pictures of you with Ringo Starr, and I see pictures with Bill Clinton. What's up with that? You got to know everybody.
I've been very lucky to be in the right place at the right time. As Dave knows, I'm kind of a closet paparazzi. And all three of my kids live in LA. And when I go to visit them, quite often I end up stalking the paparazzi. I'm not kidding. And they hang out in this spot in Beverly Hills where they used to hang out across from a juicery where my daughter Erin worked. And I would just sit across the street watching them, and then I'd go mingle with them. Some of them were kind of assholes and some were really nice. But when they go charge after somebody, I go charge with them, and it's, can't have too many hobbies.
Very
but
cool.
I've been very lucky.
No, you're really good, and people gravitate to good. And certainly that was something that was pretty clear in their eyes. You could see it. And I want to compliment you too on your family and also the people, the students that you mentored that have gone on to do great things. You might want to talk a little bit about that.
Well, that's what I've always said. Mentoring is so important. I got this job because of Lyle Shires and Lyle mentoring me. I was a little high school kid, and why he decided to hire me as a high school kid to work in the film lab. And that's a lot of responsibility for a high school kid to be in charge of processing all of the news film for a newscast. I can't believe he did that. But I've continued mentoring. I always say a teacher is only success when the student surpasses the teacher. And the two that come to mind, I've got Jeff Christian and Jake Carpenter. They started with me when they were in high school, and they shadowed me. They did internships. They did part-time. And Jeff Christian ended up at NBC News New York as a photojournalist, and Jake Carpenter shoots for CNN Chicago. So to me, it's a big deal to mentor. And I'll be doing a story, and I'll be like, well, how would Jeff Christian shoot this story? So it's just, I've been very lucky, and it depends what little I know on and see them just go, whew.
Right.
That's a big deal. And I'm very proud of my kids as well, because they're my main priority.
I've got one.
Let me just brag on Cortney a little bit. Hang on a second, Carl. Let me brag on Cortney. So Cortney was our director of photography. Not a lot of stations have it. It's separate from chief photographer, but he was the creative genius behind a very fine photography staff. And we were NPPA Station of the Year how many times, Courtney?
I think 7 or 8 for small market.
Yeah. Well, we were up in Media Market once too, didn't we?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So, but Courtney made sure to always be critiquing the photographer's work, meeting quarterly, entering contests, looking at the really good stuff from around the country. He's a fabulous leader. And I'm sure if you're out on a story thinking, how would Jay Carpenter shoot this? How many times has Jay Carpenter been out on a story and said, how would Cortney Kintzer shoot this? And I'm sure there's a lot more of those.
I've got a little fun, quirky fact about Cortney. When he was growing up, his parents did not have a car.
Then my parents never had a car.
I think that's remarkable.
Yeah.
And the fact that you walked down there to WHO, was it 1100 Walnut then?
Yeah.
Right.
And I just think that's remarkable.
Well, I love telling this story. So my parents never owned a car, so I never thought I needed to learn how to drive a car. Why would I? You know. So Lyle hired me at WHO. I did not know how to drive a car. But when Lyle, after a couple months, gave me the chance to start shooting, well, the reporter always drove the car. And I thought, well, this is great. I still don't need to learn how to drive. Until one night, it was a weeknight, and there was a fire in Sherman Hill. And Jack said, okay, Courtney, you're it. You got to go. And I said, okay, well, who's going to drive me? And he said, what the fuck do you mean, who's going to drive you? I said, I don't know how to drive. He was not. We had to call a Ruan cab. The Ruan cab took me to the fire in Sherman Hill. I still remember what apartment was on. He waited for me to shoot my film.
Oh my God.
And I brought the film back to the station. Well, then I realized, by then I was a senior. I mean, I started as a junior at Roosevelt. By then I was a senior at Roosevelt, and I had to take driver's ed. That was the most humiliating experience because everybody else said, you know, how did you learn how to drive your car? You practice on your parents' car. Yeah, I was terrified.
Oh my God.
I was forced into learning how to drive after getting outed by Jack on a weeknight. And it was, yeah, I was very uncomfortable. But that's my pathetic story, and I'm sticking to it.
Remember those cab slips?
Yes.
Yeah.
Weren't those great?
No.
And I also remember a great thing about the news. I love Lyle. I love Lyle to death. But I remember, and this is an FCC thing, every time we used the two-way radio in the newsroom, do you remember this?
Yeah,
we had to write a log.
Right.
Oh my God, he was such a pain in the ass about that.
Yes, I remember that. Randy, you
The
look
FCC.
Randy, you look like you have something to say. I've been watching your face, and you were listening to what they've been saying and some of the stories. What's your favorite story about being at WHO?
The one I remember was life-threatening, and that's when I think Suchman was shooting a stand-up with a grain truck backing into me.
Yes.
My wife wanted his address so she could ride over there and shoot him.
Classic.
I had no idea what
Take a number.
Until this huge truck bumped me a little bit.
And Karl didn't move.
And then he was
did
shooting,
not
he was
move.
shooting from the waist up, so.
Yeah, really. But you were stoic. I remember that, and you just kind of quietly walked aside when you almost got killed.
No, but Patty was livid when she saw it.
Why is this all about stupid stuff I have done?
Well,
Let's talk about scaring the bejeebies out of people going up dark grain elevators.
Oh God, I know this one.
That's pretty much it.
That was it, huh?
But, the scream could be heard all across Iowa.
Well, tell the story, Ellen. There's few people know this. Tell the story.
Really?
In
I thought you
various
did that with all the
people.
reporters. Well, we would just go up the grain elevator, and as soon as it started, he would flip the switch. Or maybe we were like up in the air a little bit, and I would scream because I was thinking, okay, we just lost power. But I was terrified of heights, and when we would get up to the top and have to shoot it, by then all my fear was done. So I thank you for that, and I am over fear of heights, thanks to you, Karl. So thank you.
Now, you know, Karl is always teaching us stuff like how to survive when you really should have been killed. And I'm going to give you an example. And Karl, you and I have talked about this several times. One of the days it scared me to death. It's got Jack Cafferty up in arms. And by the end of the day, we were all wondering, what the hell's wrong with you, Suchman? We were on a story. We stopped at one of those old style gas stations. And it had, you know, all glass, you know, those old style gas stations. We both went in and he left the scanner on because he always wanted to know if something was going to come over that we needed to go cover. We're inside. I went to the restroom. I think he went to the restroom. He's just about to pay for the gasoline. The scanner goes off. And this guy, he says, give me the money. He grabs it. He turns around and he runs out the glass window. Karl, you remember that day, don't you?
Yes, thank you for bringing this up. Right? This was really one of my better days.
I thought it was not only.
Go ahead, continue with it. Continue with it.
It
Brought it up.
scary.
We might as well just let the embarrassment continue.
No. But it scared me to death. It scared the owner of the gas station. We called an ambulance. They took you to the hospital, I believe. We thought you had cut your throat or cut something important. I got Jack on the phone. I told him about it. He wanted to know what hospital and how you were doing. And he was very serious about make sure he gets the treatment he needs and blah, 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 blah. And then when it was all over and we found out you were okay, just a few cuts and bruises, what did that asshole do that for, is what he said.
If I can continue this.
Yeah.
I got cut with some plate glass. There was probably like over 70 stitches in my knees, my arms, and my legs. And it looked like I'd been in a knife fight. And it was really a stupid thing that I had done. One of many stupid things that I had done. But it really was ugly because I remember I had 15 stitches in my thumb. And I remember that I knew that it was pulsating. And when we got to the hospital, the nurse said, I want to see it. And I'll never forget this. And I said, it's going to squirt. And she said, I want to see it. And I took my finger off of it. And it was like, it was just flowing out there. And that's, I think to this day, Bob Rucker really has trouble with seeing blood.
I do. I love Grey's Anatomy, but I won't watch the operations. I'm sorry. That's just it. But
it was a stupid thing I did, and whenever we went back to the newsroom later on that day, I said, "Okay, we got another story to shoot." Everybody just threw a big fit. Said, "We thought you were dead."
Yeah.
And that was true. I don't know if you guys were around whenever that happened. It was just another stupid thing that Suchman did because the story was more important than anything else.
But now let me just add to this a compliment and say that in my teaching career now, and I've just retired from teaching in San Jose State after 30 years.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's been very rewarding. And I always tell the story of Karl Suchman, and I always invite my dear friend to come and guest lecture. And you talked about FEMA, you've talked about a whole bunch of things. You tell that story. And I would say tenaciousness is part of the job, and you have to have critical thinking along with it. But I told him the story about a student of mine. His family came over as part of the Vietnamese boat people. He came on to college. He reminded me so much of Karl. I mean, the ideas and the creativity and the desire to use the camera and be so creative. One day he was in a TV class I wasn't teaching, but he told me about, he got a press release from the federal government that down at a nearby base near the coast of California, they were going to do a parachuting drill, and they wanted some publicity. They sent it out to all the media. He got a hold of it as a student, and he wanted to know if he could go on the shoot. So like Cortney would want to go, and like Karl would want to go, we reluctantly said, well, now the university doesn't want you to get hurt. You cannot jump. You cannot do this. And yeah. So we let him go. But like what Karl would do, and like what Cortney would do, he kept his camera in his lap as they were doing takeoff. And as they were doing takeoff, an explosion took place inside the cabin, and a fire broke out, and the brakes slammed on, and everybody was told, get out, get out, get out. And guess who kept shooting? Kept shooting. And that night, that student of ours wound up on the CBS Evening News and the Morning News for his outstanding coverage.
Hmm.
And I said, that's a Karl Suchman moment. That's a Cortney Kintzer moment. So yeah, we remember your story, but it has good meaning.
You know what? I've got 2 artificial knees. I've got a whole lot. I've been rebuilt because I so abused my body. My wife reminds me of this all the time whenever I whine about how it hurts to even get out of bed. She goes, you know what? You created this. You were the one that wanted to grab the gear and do all that stuff. So you know what? Don't whine to me. This is what you did. This is what you set up for. And she's right. I do it all over in a New York.
Do you remember, Karl, an assignment we had? I think it was the summer of 1977. A white police officer had been killed. An African-American man had been arrested. I think later they released him, but very tense, high profile story, had a racial component. There was the white police officer's funeral was at the church across the street from Drake University. They had a big color guard lined up for what seemed like blocks, and police officers from all over the Midwest. And we showed up. The funeral director saw us, was on our way to take us to the balcony to have us set up so that we could tape the funeral, film would have been tape, I think. I think it was
Yeah, by 70, it would have been tape, 3/4.
Yeah, TK-46, right?
Oh yeah, that was a lovely camera.
Yeah.
76.
76.
Yes.
I remember that.
So as we were walking toward the church, the funeral director was so proud we came to his funeral, and he was doing PR for himself. And we were walking through, and a police officer spit on me. Wow. Do you remember that? And you almost dropped your camera, and you were like, and I had on some white pants and a white shirt, and it was very hot. And you were like, what are you doing? You were really standing up for me. And I just was so humiliated. But the idea back then in 1977 was, how dare you cover this funeral? How dare you show up and exploit this horrible situation? Where now it would be totally different. And it has been for years very different. But in Des Moines at that time, and I think it was one of the first white on black kind of police officer shootings. So you don't remember that?
Sara, I don't necessarily remember that. I vaguely do, but that is something that I would have done. And I will tell you this, Ellen, as you recall, we were shooting in a gay bar, and somebody drop kicked me while we were doing the interview. And I could have turned around and just cold cocked that guy, whoever did that. But I wanted to not protect you, but I had so much, Sara and Ellen, I had so much respect for you guys. You were it had nothing to do with male or female. I just respected you so much. And to this day, I still do. And I can't believe what we see now. But my God, what you guys did and what you had to fight through. And Sara, you've told me this through doing a book of the crap that you had to put up with from Cafferty and that group. And Ellen, what you've had to put up with. I am so sickened by that. my God, you guys are so terrific. I love you guys so much. I have absolutely no problem. Didn't then, don't now. Of
Yeah.
going up against
You
that
know what?
flaming bracket.
Another one was Gus Horn. So Gus and I were on the east side of Des Moines, and there was a shooting, and I was working the late shift with Gus, and it was very cold, and Gus, of course, knew all the cops, right? And he comes, we pull up, and they're real friendly, and it was one of these buildings where there are apartments on top and a business on the bottom. And the shooting was on the top floor, second floor, and there were stairs on the side of the building to get to the second floor. You know, one of these kind of scuzzy buildings in East Des Moines. And the police officers said, "Well, Gus, you got this little girl with you."
Oh, jeez.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It gets worse though. But anyway, I didn't take any offense. You know, I was a little girl, kind of. But he said, "Have you ever been to a murder?" And I said, "Well, no." And he said, "Well, you want to see a dead body?" And I said, and I looked at Gus, and Gus was kind of query, you know, what's going on here? And so they said, "Well, come on up here. You know, what's your name, Sarah?" And they led me up those steps on the side of the building.
Wow.
And it was down a hallway. As soon as the door was open, and they were, I mean, this was so inappropriate, right?
Oh,
You don't take reporters up there. And Gus kept, on the way as I was going up, Gus says, "Sarah, I don't think you ought to go up there." And I, you know, I'm thinking I'm going to get a story or something. I don't know. So I go up there, and at the end of the hallway, and they had lit it, was a guy, and his brains had blown off into the wall with a shotgun. It had been a shotgun shooting. And I looked at that, and I looked back down at Gus, and walked right back down. And I said, and Gus said, "What's up there?" to the police officer. He says, "Well, she just saw a guy's brains blown out on the wall." And Gus tore into that cop.
Good.
And he said,
Really?
"Don't you do that. You know, we can't film that. We're here to get a story, and we got wide shots, but we couldn't film that." And they were just having fun with a, you know, cub reporter. But Gus was such a great guy.
He was.
He was, and I've got to tell you what you and Ellen had to go through. I was not aware of it because I was such a narcissist. It was all about me, and it was all about getting a story. And you know, whenever we did the book and we interviewed for that, I had no idea you guys.
Well, so I'll just real quickly, because I don't want to dominate here, but I did a Me Too story, and Cortney wrote a message to me on Facebook that just, I was so touched because Cortney remembered some things. Do you want to share
Would
that?
you like me to repeat it without giving names?
Sure.
Sure.
Okay. So I'm like in high school, I'm guessing, and it was a weekend, and you got called in on your day off to do weather, possibly.
Yeah, surprise.
Maybe.
And
Yeah.
and as you walked into the newsroom, I mean, you were doing us a favor because you were coming in on your day off, and an anchor who will remain unnamed yelled across the newsroom, "So, Sarah, did we take you away from your vibrator?"
Yeah.
Again,
I was like, that has stuck with me. I was just like, oh my God, how embarrassing.
And there was a tither of laughter, and yeah. And it's so funny that as a high schooler, you heard that. That's
So I'm having a little trouble hearing Cortney. What did he just say, Sarah, if you don't mind repeating?
Yeah, you broke up a little bit, Courtney.
Okay.
So, yeah, go ahead.
As Sarah walked into the newsroom coming in on her day off, an anchor yelled across the newsroom, "So, Sarah, did we take you away from your vibrator?"
Oh God.
Oh,
Oh, I
God.
remember that. Oh my, I was so sick with that.
That's awful.
Well, I later worked for Phil as, a producer. And I have to say, Phil was such a gentleman. He really, I never held anything against him like that. But it was, it was kind of soul crushing at times.
I'll bet.
But we didn't even know the term sexual harassment. We didn't even, most of the time, of course, Cafferty told me I wasn't a team player and it was always my fault. But we don't need to go into that. But I thought as a high schooler, hearing that, so inappropriate. Yeah.
How many women were on the staff then? I'm trying to remember. There were just but like Ellen, when you started, there were 3 women on the entire staff. You
First there was Ann Lilly.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Ann Lilly. And then I was the second and Ellen was the third.
And Candy Ma. Candy.
Right.
Candace Haar.
Oh, Candace was there. Yeah. On the reporting staff. Yeah. And yeah, Candace was there, of course.
Okay, I want to throw this a little bit higher level, not higher level, a little bit humorous. I've got a story for Dave. I had been hired, we graduated from Mizzou on May 5th or 6th, like a Saturday, 76. I started that following Monday. And I want to say you came up 2 or 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
Dave worked for WHO Radio, which was so similar. I mean, it was like we were such family. And Dave always thought I was a little bit crazy anyway.
Really?
Well, I had shaved half of my beard off during one class, the first classes at Mizzou. And Mizzou was a very prestigious place to go to J school. Sorry, Sarah, I know the Illinois thinks that they're special too. But Mizzou, we have a very special place. Ellen, you agree with this. So I had shaved half my beard off, and Dave thought, my God, this guy is the biggest bozo in the world. and Dave was on the radio side, and the radio side at Mizzou thought TV side were just a bunch of clowns, that we weren't really serious journalists.
That's not true.
Well, that was a feeling that I had.
Yeah.
So anyway, we knew each other. We liked each other. So I had been at WHO TV for a couple of weeks and felt pretty comfortable. I had heard that Dave had been hired by WHO Radio. So he is on the south end or whatever end of the radio station was on the one end and TV station was on the other end. So Dave comes in and I just got done with a shoot and I look up and I see him and I said, "Booze! Terrific!" He was so frigging embarrassed. He thought that
Oh, Richard!
Richard! Oh, sorry, Carl, but hello, Richard. You're muted.
You're
sir.
muted,
There you go.
Hey guys,
Hey, Richard, how are you?
I'm late, man.
That's all right.
terrific. You just ruined one of my best stories. That's fine, Rich.
I may have to put on my headsets too because I'm deaf.
That's all right. You take your time. Go
I
ahead.
was just saying I couldn't hear you.
Okay, let me see. We got Bob. How you doing, man? I see Karl. I see Sara. See all sorts of people there.
And congratulations to you, Rich. It's understanding that you joined the retirement club now.
I've done what?
You've retired?
Yeah, I retired in May of 2019, but I'm actually probably busier now than I've ever been.
Really?
So yeah, I'm really having a good time.
Very
Playing a
good.
lot of baseball. When I was a 10-year-old kid, if you would have asked me what I want to do, I wanted to be a baseball player or a movie actor. So now I'm doing both. So.
Very good. Well, we were starting to tell some interesting stories, and I'm sure you've got one to share with us. And then we've also talked about some weird things, and Cortney and I have been talking about some weird things that we see on the news now, and we wonder, where's all the seriousness? We were dedicated. We were hardworking. We took this as an important, noble calling. And then Cortney reminded me, well, I have something you might also want to show. Cortney, is it all right if we take a look at that video?
I think this would be a very appropriate time because we've been talking about some things that we get to, if you can get this to play, that's about a 12-minute little blooper reel.
Okay.
Very good. And some of these we've seen before, but let's see them again.
Bob, are you going to
The kind of hardships you're going to like this one. Because
Hold on. All right, I'm settled.
You want me to start?
Yeah.
Because Midwest farmers are increasingly more market-oriented, bean sales of that size, especially to an otherwise non-buying country, pose special hardships, the kind of hardships that farmers can do without. Randy Parlett, Eyewitness News.
With Jack Cafferty, Phil Thomas, Jerry Reno, Jim Zabel, and the rest of the Eyewitness News team. Now here's Jack Cafferty.
Good evening. That was our producer. Indiana today ratified the Equal Rights Amendment to the Constitution.
Oh, God, you ass.
This is Eyewitness News.
Good afternoon. I'm Steve Gangstead. Last night's camp out for mortgage money ended this morning. The weather was like last Tuesday. You would never have been wearing a sweater. I would melt into a little pile. All right. Thank you, Rick.
There it is. There it is.
You bastards.
Stop it, will you? I'm getting sick of donuts. That's the biggest donut I've ever seen. Hey, turn that thing on.
The open house here on Capitol Hill is keep it rolling. The open house here on Capitol Hill makes this a different sort of day in the House of...
The ultimate goal is an amendment to the U.S. Constitution making abortion illegal. With a Democratic Congress and a president, Jimmy Carter, who opposes such an amendment, the tough will be fight. One exhibitor told me that people Okay. One exhibitor told me that people...
Almost a year since you had a cigarette. How do you assess the last year without smoking? Up your ass.
That's Chris Long, isn't it?
Chris Long,
Yeah, Chris Long.
Oh.
Yes.
And Lloyd Patterson.
Lloyd Patterson.
Yeah.
Adventureland.
Science, it's here. Wait a minute.
Yes, 1976 may be a year...
The Panthers, if that asshole would quit making noise over there.
There had been some question of whether or not Senator Dole was following Jimmy Carter around the country. You may remember he was in Seattle after the...
So some 17 hours after Jimmy Carter arrived, he pulled out on his way to Georgia. Well, he will... Stop it. So some 17 hours after Jimmy Carter arrived, he left Des Moines, headed for Georgia, where he will rest until Tuesday. He did exactly as he was expected to do. He delivered a plea for the Midwestern farm vote. And the Republicans come down to... Still got it?
Tonight at 7 p.m. the... Got it. The governor. He's a senator, Bob.
Chris Long reporting for Eyewitness News. Screw it.
We had a lot of patience.
He's in to speak with the governor at the state fair. Later on, he'll also talk with Lawrence Welk. As for the, forget it. There has a drop there of 588. Kill it. I can bring that up. You have spin. For the most part, people around town agree that it's worth the price. Bob Rucker reporting for Eyewitness News. Didn't like that.
Here's Rich.
The general manager of the MTA says the charges. The general manager of the MTA says the letter. The general manager of the MTA says the federal report. The general manager from the MTA says the federal report.
When this hatchery is completed, tank trucks will drive right up to the ponds themselves and deliver. Forget it.
The federal government gives Des Moines buses 30 days to answer possible charges of discrimination. Hi, I'm Ellen Jaffe. I'll have that story coming up on Eyewitness News.
It's all part of a fish trade program that the Iowa Department of Conservation is conducting. God damn it.
Hello, I'm Steve Gangstead with a report on open house at the Iowa House coming up on Eyewitness News.
Did about $12,000 damage to the frame house. Junior DeVore, a family friend, got.
The car dealers meeting here in Des Moines are aware that The car dealers meeting here in Des Moines recognize that
This is Joe Cool, your Joe Cool reporter. Photographer Cortney Kintzer and I have been out freezing our asses off trying to shoot some dead fish. You people at Drake ought to realize what the hell kind of business you're getting into. Cortney had some trouble. He was trying to get some nice sound of the water going, and the asshole dumped the microphone into the water. Into the water. Can you believe that?
people are always saying, Steve, how do you do it? How can you fit it all in? Well, there's no simple answer. I drink high C, get lots of vitamins, sleep 10 to 12 hours every afternoon, and show up for work when I feel like it. Carol, how long have you been utterly weird?
You're not supposed to talk to your mouth full.
Carol, it's not your mouth that's full, that's your nose.
My nose is up here, dingo.
Oh, that's what you call it?
Gangstead, if you're going to be an asshole, you can get involved in this, too. Tell us, Steve, how long have you had a speech impediment? Come here, boy.
I'm on a late timetable right now. I got to get back for the news. Can't you,
One of your children want to make fun?
maybe one of them kids here, he's looking for somebody to go get some ice for him. Courtney, I just had a little distraction here, but you can just say when or whatever. Or if you're not ready yet, just take your time. That's okay.
This library is one of many rooms where 30 volunteers have...
Coming up on Eyewitness News. That was no good.
30 volunteers have spent most of their time trying to
People always say to me, Steve, don't you have any kind of moral remorse or regret about endorsing products like Pepsi on the news? I'll tell you, man, Pepsi's great. People are always saying, why are you covering rock concerts from outside the fence? Well, that's a good question.
Fire does an estimated $10,000 damage here in West Des Moines. Let me try that again.
Eyewitness News has reported Des Moines. Fuck it. Stop it. Stop it.
Oh, shit.
And they're already finding out what kind of problems that might mean. Steve Gangstead.
It's another Sunday afternoon and it's hot, and here's another dipshit story. I'm Sara Ivey, coming up on Eyewitness News.
Yes.
People can now drive into movies, banks, and forget it, I screwed it up. So you turn it off. As Des Moines' water supply dwindles, Bob, we are going to get hit by this car.
Let's just go ahead. I'm not saying anything. I know you're running, so.
The phone rarely rings. That's not the name of a soap opera. That's the way one...
Go, Sarah, go!
Describes sales for the month of May. And it's the month of June. The sale... Oh. Cut it. Come on, stop it.
The proposed historic preservation audience will... cut... Hello, we're reporting for WHO today at Merle Hay Mall, where Sara Ivey is shooting film of the two of us.
Yes, that's right, Steve. This is a CP16 Cinema Products camera. It is not as heavy as it looks.
Is it more of a toy than you once thought it was?
Oh, yes. After a certain period of time, it just becomes like a Kodak Instamatic.
This non-event is really getting quite a bit of attention and probably more publicity than it deserves. Two of the area's top professionals are covering this story.
Right. Well, let's say goodbye.
All right, let's sign off.
Goodbye, Steve.
Let's put a 30 on this one.
30.
Oh, beautiful. Hold on, you got another one coming. Okay.
This was Karl Suchman's idea, I'm sure.
I don't believe this.
Leaf burning returns to Des Moines. Hello, I'm Bill George. I'll have the... Oh, Jesus.
Stay tuned at 6 and 10.
Hello, I'm Steve Gangstead, reporting from Veterans Auditorium, where Des Moines police are planning to frisk President Jimmy Carter this weekend, looking for any marijuana in his pocket or any lust in his heart. Details coming up on Eyewitness News.
Hi, I'm Kathy. Okay. There's no doubt about it. There's definitely going to be a new hotel in Des Moines. Wait, are you roll? Wait, don't roll yet. Wait.
Don't crack up.
That's too. What the hell you want to do? If you want. No, I won't crack up.
I'm in love.
Well, you got this thing about him. You realize I'm going to dub this off to E&G and edit it that way. Really screw this report one way or the other. I can't.
Well, you got to have one ugly guy to balance it off, like you had Barco last time you saw.
Oh man, that come up when you wanted to.
The beach is pretty well filled with bodies. It's the first hot day in several...
The hell with it. I said hell.
Okay. Bye, Mom.
Dad.
The beach was pretty well filled with bodies. It's the first hot day in several weeks. There are lots of people outdoors.
Sounds like that idiot Cooney.
Sorry,
Good evening. I'm Steve Gangstead at the steps of the Iowa State Capitol, where a large crowd of local people have gathered to demand that Bob Rucker be taken off Eyewitness News. Bob, what do you think of this?
Eat it, clown!
I love it. Well, Cortney, you got to tell them where that came from.
My blooper reel collection. One was a film blooper reel, and from WHO that I was somehow put in charge of back in the day, and a 3/4 inch blooper reel from Channel 13, which I have and they don't. So I put that together last week, I think, and got it to you.
Well, when I
So
read
funny,
that,
Do you have it posted like a YouTube channel?
yeah,
Well,
I put it on my YouTube channel. I'll give you guys the link to it.
Great.
Rich,
Bob, you asked me if I had a story. I think I do have a story that I would like to share with you. I think I shared this with Randy a couple of years ago on Facebook, but let me get a picture here. And the story goes like this. I'm sitting in my office or my desk at Channel 4 about 5 years ago. maybe 10. My memory's not very good. But this guy calls me and he said, "You're not going to remember me, but I was an intern at WHO back in 1977 or 78 or whatever. And he's had this whole sleeve of black and white photos that he had taken of the newsroom. And I don't know if I can see this, but Randy's in this picture and I'm sitting in the back. This is one that he had printed out. But I think I'm sitting at the chair there. You can see Randy, he's close to the camera. But anyways, I've got this whole, I didn't know what to do with it. So I've kept it. If anybody else wants to, I know Cortney, you're interested in photography stuff. I could send that stuff to you because there's pictures of that whole era of
Do you remember his name? That's when we were all there.
Would be of interest, I think, to people.
I would love to be able to.
And he was working at, I got to put I can't hear anything because I put these back. He was working for the city of Dallas. He was like, code inspector or something. And of course, he's in his 40s now, or maybe even older than that, because that was so long ago and we're all so old.
Please,
it was fascinating to see those pictures. And all of you guys are in them. I'll send them. Maybe I'll send them to Cortney. Courtney.
Yeah. Do you have the negatives? Is that what you got?
Yeah, that's what I've got is the sleeve of negatives. He had a few pictures out, including this one I showed you. And I like this one because you can't see it very well what I showed you. But I'm actually sitting at a desk eating my lunch. It looks like I've got a fast food lunch or something. And you see the Eyewitness News, and you see Randy. And I think that's Ellen. Yeah, Ellen's sitting in the desk in front of me. So there's a bunch of pictures,
his name?
Probably 30 or 40 pictures.
Do you remember his name?
Pardon?
Do you remember his name?
I might have him. I'll have to dig through my stuff if I can find his name.
That's
I don't
really
remember
great.
off the top of my head.
Carl Suchman.
I'm sorry?
Rich, is it Carl Suchman? He works for the city of Dallas.
It's got to be him. Maybe he's contacted other people too.
Yes, because
there couldn't be two guys working for the city of Dallas who were interns at that time period.
Yeah, I think it's him.
So have other guys talked to him? Has he contacted anybody else?
No.
Okay,
I'm on Facebook with him.
Okay, well, I will share with somebody those negatives because I don't know what to do with them.
No, he worked for HO, not in the news department, upstairs in administration.
Yeah, and the story he told me was he was only there for a little while, and he was just down in the newsroom and he had a camera and he took a bunch of pictures. So I just thought it was kind of interesting.
That's cool. Hey, listen, Rich, thank you for that. I hope to see those when they get developed. We were telling stories, Rich, about experiences we remembered, good, bad, or ugly. Can you share one, and then we're going to start to wrap this up?
Getting fired there was like the worst thing that ever happened in my career. And I got a job within 2 weeks, and I got paid by 2 companies for 2.5 months. So financially turned out to be all right. But I mean, I have like a lot of the places that I work, I have a lot of really good memories of coworkers. Like all of you guys, I have great memories of the fun we used to have. We were young and full of piss and vinegar. And I had I'll tell one great story about after WHO. 3 Mile Island happens. And I'm not, by this time, it's a couple years later, and I'm working in Cedar Rapids. And I'm standing on a highway down south of Harrisburg, while the world's threatening to blow up, and we're the only news people are crazy enough to be anywhere near these nuclear plants. China Cinder's just out, and there's all this. And I'm standing there trying to do a stand-up, and I hear this voice behind me go, "Excuse me, I think you need to get off this road," or something like that. And I turn around, and it's Bob Rucker. He's working. By that time, he's leaped over all of us, and he's working for some station in Philadelphia, just yanking my chain really, really good somewhere in the middle of Pennsylvania. And of course, I've run into Karl, and I are mostly phone friends. We've run into each other a few times working, and Sara and I worked together in Dallas for 3 or 4 years, right? When I first came to Dallas, Sara was producing, and I always loved Sara anyway. You know that, Sara. And so we remained friends on Facebook and stuff. And Karl and I talk every once in a while. Randy, I know I think I'm friends with Cortney on Facebook. I just can't. I can never think of Cortney except as this 15-year-old kid that was such a great photographer. And now he's a grown-up, handsome man. But Cortney, I still remember that kid that looked about 12 years old. That's the guy.
Thank you.
Rich,
all of you.
Hey,
Best memories of all of you.
Rich, if I can jump in here. You and I did a little trip called 18 Wheels to Philly.
Oh, yeah.
Which was just the most miserable time you ever spent. We were frozen. Talk about that a little bit.
It was miserable. This guy,
film.
Yeah, in fact, that's another thing. Just a couple of years ago, I was just kind of searching because I was hoping to find 18 Wheels to Philly on the internet somewhere. Instead, I found a documentary that we did on Charles Barthold's tornado, his anticyclonic tornado. That's on the internet. If you search it, you can find it. And my delivery on that is awful. I don't know how I got a job in Des Moines. My delivery was just terrible, but I think I had a cold or something. It sounds like I really had a bad cold. But Charlie's film and the story was pretty cool. But yeah, do you have a copy of 18 Wheels to Philly, Karl, or not?
No, I would love to have it.
I couldn't find it, but it was miserable. It was, the guy's truck broke down. We're stuck in the middle of nowhere, freezing our buns off.
I mean,
it was
the highest temperature we had was like 1 degree above zero.
Oh yeah, it was bad.
I remember taking the CP16 batteries and putting them in my underwear to get them recharged.
Those poor batteries.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. And the poor person that had to put them back in the camera.
There's nothing like having a sharing group, where we can just say anything. Hey, listen, but before we do wrap up, I'm going to ask everybody to be thinking about any final comment they want to say about their career and how it was made possible or how WHO affected you overall. And I'm going to start that by first complimenting and thanking all of you for doing this tonight to honor Karl's birthday and my birthday tomorrow. I really appreciate it, and I know Karl does too. I want to speak to each of you short and simple, and then just tell you a very quick thing. Randy, I'll start with you. I felt bad for you. They stuck you with me as a co-anchor, and I had just graduated college. I'd only anchored the news in a college setting, never studied journalism. I was an avid fan of Walter Cronkite, and I watched the news ever since I was a baby because my parents made us do it. So I knew what was expected. And then they set me next to this consummate professional, very serious, very straightforward. And I used to love it when you would compliment us, me in particular, but also what we did and how you brought the professionalism out in me. And I thank you for that. That was something you gave me. Rich Ray, you came along a little bit later, right before I left. And yeah, I gave you hell at 3 Mile Island because, hey, you needed it. But having said that, you were always a good friend, and I enjoyed talking to you. And I was so happy to see you had such success in Dallas. So congratulations.
Well, and we got to see each other several times afterwards. One of our producers, I don't know if you guys know this, was a star pupil, I think, of Bob's out in college, and ended up being one of our managing editors or something. So Bob and I saw each other for a few years there. It's been a while, but Bob would come out to Dallas, and it was always fun to get together with you two. Really appreciate that.
I'm retired now, so anytime you want to get together anywhere in the world, I propose Barcelona. That's my favorite.
Well, we've got our shots, and we're traveling now, so we're ready.
Amen, brother. I'm ready to join you. Cortney Kintzer, you amazed me when you were just so young and so brilliant, and you taught this kid who was scared to death. I'm a black kid from the south side of Chicago, hired by Jack Cafferty, who told me in my job interview, just remember, kid, nobody gives a shit that you were born. It's all about what have you done for us lately. And I wondered if he ever gave you that speech. Did he ever say that to you?
No. One thing that I have always remembered, you're only as good as your last story, or you're only as good as your next story. But I want to thank all of you. I have so many wonderful memories of every single one of you. And, you were so kind to me as a little pipsqueak high school kid, and you encouraged me, and I'm here because of everything that you guys taught me, and it means a lot to see all of you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Ellen Jaffe and Sara Ivey. I never knew all the things that you were going up against as women in the media. I can tell you in a state with only 2% Black people, I was never lost in a crowd, so I remember also having some challenges. But all of you made me feel welcome, even though I didn't know a damn thing, and I had to learn from scratch. And Karl Suchman saved my ass more times than I can tell you about how to put video and film together. Dave Busiek, I admired the fact that he yelled at your name out. I remember hearing about that and thinking, that sounds like Karl, you poor guy. And Ben, I see your name, Ben. You know as well as I do, Steve. You're a dear friend, we've kept in touch. You went on to the Foreign Service and you lived the dream. You got to go all over the world. Come on, tell us about that.
It's got a soporific effect on so many people that I won't, but my goodness, what a splendid thing this is. Yeah, after I left Des Moines, I was in the Foreign Service for 22 years, and I've been retired living in Minneapolis. It's so much fun to see your faces. Karl evoked exuberance, and I think that was part of what fueled us, and it was an exceptional convergence with something special about it, but really fun to be doing this. And big thanks to Bob for being our coordinator. You cannot have a circus without a ringmaster, and Bob is mastering the ring.
I finally learned how to do something well, being a professor. I never shut up, so it works. It really does. Tony Powers. I used to watch your energy. You burst through a newsroom, and we all knew we had to get the hell out of the way because you had something to do. You had something to accomplish. I hope your life has turned out as beautifully as the way you projected.
Oh, had a fantastic life after WHO, and again, just tremendous. My wife and I, our lives changed when we started buying Apple stock. Back when it came out. So we're one of the, we own a lot of Apple stock, and we're real fortunate. You've seen what that's done over the years, and WHO taught me a lot of that. And I've got a lot of great memories in my novel, famous people that you might meet in eternity. If you get a chance, either get that on Kindle or or paperback. It's a surreal novel, but there's a lot of WHO memories in the novel, and I think you'll get a kick out of that.
Very good. Thank you, Tony. Any final thoughts from anyone else?
I do want to say this. It has been remarkable how many times I ran into Dave Busiek, several times, because they would always send me up for several years. They would send me up to do the Iowa caucuses when I first started working in Dallas. And Dave and I had a lot of fun times reminiscing, probably waiting for some candidate to show up and talk. And I've had I know, Steve, that I think you were working at the embassy in Colombia.
Yes, Bogota.
You and I had some kind of exchange. I don't think email was even around then. Maybe we had a telephone conversation or something. But I was always
so I would get, they'd give me the phone calls, and the embassy would get hit by a missile, by a narco or something, and then the reporters would call from all over for a soundbite.
Yeah, I'm sure I did that, and I just was delighted to. I always figured you were working for the CIA. I don't know. He's going like this, so probably. But I always thought that was kind of cool. And again, Karl and I have had, over the last several years, Karl and I have had a lot of time to at least exchange texts and emails and even run into each other once in a while. The same with Sara. So I've been blessed to know all you guys and to run into most of you at one time or another, just on Facebook. And this is fun. This is really great. I'm sorry I got into it late.
No problem. Anyone else? Sara, any thoughts?
Well, I would say one of the funny things that happened is doing the noon news, and Dwayne Ellett was across the studio getting ready for his, his floppy show and cartoons. And I think Dwayne, he would play tricks on me, and I just adored him. And I think he helped me understand that you always stay focused no matter what's going on, including when someone crawls under the anchor desk and takes off your shoes.
Was that Jerry Todd?
Dwayne did that a couple of times. He would crawl under there and take my shoes.
That's funny. That's wild. I didn't know he was that crazy.
He was pretty crazy around the noon show. Then another thing that happened is I finished the noon show one day and there was a house fire, and Jerry met me as I was coming out. He takes my script, he gives me a bell and howl and the tape recorder, cassette tape recorder, and he has a cab slip and an address, and he says, go to this house fire. And so it was not very far away, maybe 5 minutes, and I show up at this fire, and the firefighters are looking, and they're, it's very noisy, and I'm shooting with the bell and howl, and they say something like, great to see you and whatever, and it's like, yeah, and they ask me some questions I can't really hear, and I go, yeah, and so, it's kind of like turn back so I can, so they put out the fire quickly, and they came over and they said, wow, that's just amazing that they stopped the news so that you could come to our fire. and I said, what? They said, well, that's what you said, right? I said, stop the news. They said, well, yeah, we were sitting there and we got the call, and then you show up at our fire. And they were watching me do the news.
That's hilarious.
And on the car radio, Candy Har would say, did you get flames?
Yes. Did you get flames?
My favorite.
I'm sorry. Go
real quick, I got a Candy Har story. Again, I'm sure I was in high school, and over the police scanner, say at 7 o'clock at night, triple fatal, 63rd Street, River Bridge, and Candy yells out, whoopee, I've got a lead story. That's burned in my brain.
She actually yelled out, whoopee?
Whoopee, I've got a lead story.
Oh,
yeah.
For them.
Yeah.
And I know that she went on to work for the president of the University of Michigan, Candace Har. So
and led a foundation.
Yes.
I stayed in touch with her for quite a few years. And we actually saw each other at one point when she was coming through Dallas.
Well, tell her I want to reconnect if you ever talk to her again.
Oh, okay. I may have her email. I think I do. But she had, she took over the executive director position for a very prestigious foundation at Michigan.
And they were the beneficiary. She was good.
Yeah, and she's retired now.
Oh, she is? Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Ellen Jaffe, you'll never retire, right? You're going to run forever.
Well, the R word scares me. In Florida, and if anybody's ever down this way, call me, Sarasota. It's just a fun place to live. And, when I worked in Miami and then moved back to St. Louis, which was my hometown, for a lot of years, I had some regrets about doing that, even though everything, of course, always works out, right? But it's just great to be back here. And just, again, thank you so much for organizing this. I hope you guys have wonderful birthdays the rest of the evening, week, however long you celebrate. And, because you're retired now, you can celebrate as long as you want. But yeah, this has just been so amazing to see everybody. And thank you all for, contributing to apparently everybody's lives, but, especially Shook, just, oh my gosh, you taught me to be fearless. And I am so grateful for that. I mean, it really helped me in everything. So thank you guys. Just great to see everybody.
Go ahead, Dave. You want to say?
Just great to see everybody. Gangstead, could sit down and listen. It would not have a soporific effect on me. And I had to look it up to see what it means. But I would love to hear all that you've done. I've always thought about you, what a tremendous career you've had. But it's just great to see you all.
Steve loves to travel, and he comes to visit out here, and we're certainly the beneficiary of a lot of fun times. I hope you get to travel more, Steve.
Yeah, I'm kind of international white trash.
And on that interesting note, Mr. Suchman, you and I are older as of me tomorrow and you last Friday. How's it feel?
I'm worn out, but I have worn it well. I am so beat up, but I would do everything if I could. I've got artificial knees. I've got so many things bad, but I'm doing New York Minute. But I will say this. For the group, I ask you all to gather 1 year from today, for all the nations you may live in, to gather for the journalist to participate in the Olympic journalism and to participate for the greatest journalist that I know. I ask you to participate this. Let's make this an annual deal.
Hear, hear.
That's a great idea. And I think I'm hearing he's going to pay for the airline tickets and all of that. So let's do it, guys. No, Carl, I took that seriously.
I will pay for everything.
No. We won't.
I voted for Trump.
I love the idea, and I would second it in a second. Any other thoughts? Anyone?
We haven't heard from Randy.
I want to say something.
Of course.
Ruck, this is absolutely terrific. With what you have been going through, my God, this is, we all have pains. We all have tribulations, but for what you've gone through, we thank you. And folks, I hope you have enjoyed this. Let's do it again. I miss you guys. I love you guys. You are a special part of my life, an incredible special part of my life.
Just one suggestion, next year, let's make sure we get Jerry Todd on the call.
Okay, I have to ask. I wasn't going to ask, but whatever happened to Gerald R. Jensen Jr.?
I know he went to Green Bay for a while. That's the last I heard of him.
He was in Grand Rapids for a while, I think, and he was in Tucson for a while, I think. But I'm just asking. I didn't know.
Good riddance.
He was over his head as news director, and what he did to you was horrible. But it was really more about his insecurities and failings than anything you did.
Oh yeah, no, he fired me, but I've forgiven him years ago. I'm just curious whatever happened to him.
All right, the only problem is Steve and Cortney, get better microphones. To hear you.
We need better hearing aids.
Yeah, really. I think that's part of the factors here. All right, then very quickly, I'll just answer or respond to.
Let's do this again next year.
Yes, I want to do it. I definitely do. And Karl was referring to a situation I have now. I have a younger sister, 2 years younger, who was born with Down syndrome. And I promised my parents a long time ago that if I should outlive them, that I would take her the rest of the way. And it looks like we're approaching the end of the rest of the way now. She's having some very difficult times. So a lot of the things that I wanted to do, I can't travel right now because I must be with her. I love my sister dearly. But seeing you today, all of you, and remembering how you changed my life for the better and how I talked about you always in my classes. Thank you. Thank you for being in my life. It meant a lot.
Thank you. Thank all of you. You are special.
Great to see
Very,
you.
very special.
So let's do it
God
again.
bless y'all. And I'll keep that in our prayers.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And keep
Mine
in
too.
touch. Keep in touch. Send me your email.
Yes, please do.
your phone
I think
number.
if everyone's not friends with me on Facebook, my personal page is Richard Allen. And I think I'm friends with most of you, but I want to be friends with all of you on Facebook. That's a good way to keep in contact. So, Tony, I think you and I are friends. I know Randy and I are friends. I think Courtney and Carl. But anyway, if I'm not, look me up.
Definitely.
See y'all.
And we need to get Candace and Kathy Clutie on here.
Yes. I looked for them, but I couldn't find it. But thank you all. Have a good summer. Have a drink for me and Carl tomorrow, okay?
Wiedersehen.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Carl. And say hello to Julie's for me.
We'll do so.